Hey everyone, welcome. This is a new episode of Fabric Espresso. Today, Eren is joining me to discuss the Data Wrangler, a functionality that helps you to do data engineering and also digging into your data that will accelerate your data science experimentation. Eren, can you start with recalling what is Data Wrangler, when I should use it, and what's the value of that functionality?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Estera. So Data Wrangler is a tool that's available in Fabric notebooks for exploratory analysis and transformation of data frames. When the tool first launched, it was optimized for pandas data frames. So the idea is that if you have, some pandas data in your notebook, but you are a low-code user, or you're a little rusty on the Python development, or you don't want to go and muck around in Stack Overflow, you could open up any pandas data frame in a more immersive view, get a sense of the distribution of the data, the different columns, apply transformations from a predefined set of operations we have, and then generate the code in real time. So I can show the interface off just to give a sense of what that looks like. The idea behind Data Wrangler is that we're trying to give users a better place to dive deep into their data. So the interface looks like this for a kind of standard pandas use case. The idea is that you have a data grid here that's kind of Excel-like. So you see, all of the rows. You have type information and built-in visuals atop the columns. And then you can get started with more analysis and also transformation using some of these other panels. So on the right, we see a summary panel that gives us the shape of the data, some information about missing rows. You can make that more specific by clicking on a given column. And then if we go over here to the operations panel, here's where we can start to dig into transformations of that data. So everything from really simple things like dropping a given column to more complex formulas like one-hot encoding, you can do using Data Wrangler. And the way it works basically is you select a target column. So the simplest example, dropping something like this row number column. Data Wrangler shows you live in that preview what's going to happen when the operation is applied. So we see this column kind of blurred out in red, and we get the code below it. So crucially, all of this is going to end up being code that's reproducible and transparent and back in your notebook. It's not a black box where the data is kind of getting transformed, but you don't see what happens. And with any given step, when you see the preview, you can apply it or you can discard it. So if you don't like it, you can clear it. But if you do like it, you can click apply. And what's going to happen is it's going to commit that loaded diff view into a code step that's been applied as part of this history on the left. So if you go to cleaning steps, you can then see the most recently applied operation. And you kind of keep going in that fashion and adding them on. And then when you're done, you can add that code back to the notebook and you'd land back in the same place, basically, with all of that wrapped up as a function. So not destructive, not going to overwrite anything, but basically a way to streamline some of these steps for low code users, or just give you a different way of doing some of the transformations that otherwise you'd do in a kind of less interactive, less visual environment.
So is Data Wrangler for those who want to accelerate working with Spark, but for example, the skill set and the capabilities with writing the code with Spark is just, let's say that at the beginning, because Data Wrangler will produce the code for them that they can use in the notebook?
Yeah. Data Wrangler is a code generation tool that accelerates workflows for exploring and transforming data in Fabric notebooks. We started with pandas data frames, but now the tool supports Spark use cases. So you can open up Spark data frames, not just pandas data frames, using the tool, transform those data frames in a performant, interactive environment, and then at the end, generate all the code. So everything you do is going to be reproducible, and it's going to land back in the Fabric notebook. Typically, when we've demonstrated these capabilities, we use that pandas workflow. So the notebook that I've opened is one of our data science samples. It's the evaluation and scoring of a churn prediction model, and it walks you through the entire machine learning workflow from acquiring data, making sure it's in the lakehouse, sort of all set, transforming the data, training the model, doing some inferencing at the end. And we're focusing really just at that first step, the exploration and the transformation of the data, which often, takes as long as, if not longer than the rest of the model training. And in this notebook, which was released before we had Spark capabilities in Data Wrangler, we were using Data Wrangler in pandas, right? So the first step basically was after you load in this data, we have this Spark data frame here. But in order to use Data Wrangler for a while, what you had to do is actually kind of sample it down or convert it to pandas in the first place. So we were limited in that way. Now, though, the idea is that you don't actually need to run this separate step in order to use Data Wrangler. The tool lets you open both. So if we go up here to the toolbar, the way you launch Data Wrangler is by clicking on this prompt. And we're going to see when it opens that there are two subheaders. There are our pandas data frames, which is typically what we've shown. You also now have the Spark ability. And we're also going to take a look at this example for choosing custom samples. So Data Wrangler wants to keep everything kind of snappy and light. And so even with Spark data frames, what we're doing behind the scenes is sampling it down to pandas and then converting your code for you at the end. Now, Spark use cases are really important for our customer base, but Spark data tends to be bigger, right? And so you still have the ability here with the tool to actually customize how much of it you're going to see in Data Wrangler, right? If we have to do a sample, we want to give you the option to customize exactly what that looks like. So in this case, what I'm going to do is select that Spark data frame here. We're not going to open the pandas data frame that we converted in the notebook. And I'm going to choose to take, let's say a random set of 7,500 rows. I think it's 10,000 overall. So not gigantic. It's still really on the smaller side, but I'm just showing you that Data Wrangler gives you the ability to kind of customize what you're opening with the Spark data frame. So now the grid loads up, and crucially, everything looks the same as it would for pandas. So there's not a new set of skills you need to learn if you're working with the Spark data frame and Data Wrangler. And actually, as we see in this banner above, what has happened is the Spark data frame has been converted into a Panda sample for the purposes of applying these code operations quickly. But everything that's generated in the end is going to be Spark, and we opened a Spark data frame. So the idea is that you have the ability to upskill from Pandas to Spark really seamlessly. I'm going to dismiss that notification and just show you the kind of data wrangler flow for a few of these operations. So on the simpler side, we might want to drop these columns, row number and customer ID, because they won't be useful for training a model. So I can target both of those, go to this set of schema operations, click on drop columns, and Data Wrangler is going to load a preview. We're going to see what it's going to look like at the grid without those columns. We'll see the code below, and in the interim, it's generated in pandas, but we'll convert that to Spark at the end, and we can apply that step. And just to show you what I mean about that Spark conversion, if we go up here and we were to add that code to the notebook, we see that in the Spark use case, Data Wrangler is going to generate that preview of the Spark code. And you actually have the option to include the pandas code too if you want. Sometimes that's important for users, right? To be able to have the same logic for either the smaller pandas sample or the larger original Spark data frame. For now, though, let's go into a few more steps here just to show you a sense of what you could do with the tool. So after we've dropped a few columns, we might want to do something a little bit more complex. Let's take a look at these numeric columns, which are indicated, with the binned histograms in those column headers. I'm just going to click on a few of them. Let's just start with 4. We might want to scale those values. So for the purposes of training, we might want the values normalized, right, between 0 and 1. So I'm going to go to the numeric operations, click on scale, and those 4 columns that I selected are now being previewed as new columns that have values spanning 0 to 1. So we can take a look at the preview. Those are those new columns next to the original ones. We have the code generated in pandas below. It's going to be converted to Spark in the end, and we can apply that step. We notice that every time we do this, the cleaning steps get added to that section on the left as a kind of running history. The last thing I'm going to do in this short example before adding it back to the notebook is one-hot encoding on 2 of these columns. So I think for gender and geography, which have these values, we want to make it easier to train a model by creating new columns with zeros and ones. I'm going to go to formulas, click on one-hot encode, and the same thing's going to happen. I'm going to get a preview of what those columns will look like once the operation has been applied. We see those here, we see the code below, and I can apply that step. So as a recap, what we've done is open a Spark data frame in Data Wrangler. We get that automatic sample translation to pandas. In our case, we customized it. We took a random set of rows. We can apply those steps the same way we would with the pandas data frame, get them all queued up. But when we go and add the code to the notebook, we see that we're going to be able to add Spark code back. It's automatically translated for you. So any of the translation you would otherwise manually do is just taken care of. And for good measure, we can include the pandas code too if you wanted to kind of compare them side by side or had the option to run that code on the sample. We land back in the notebook and nothing is overwritten, nothing is destroyed. What we have here is a function that wraps up all those Data Wrangler steps, and you can apply that in the notebook. So for the Panda sample, we have that reference, but we have this cell that is generating that code for the PySpark data frame. So it corresponds to what we saw in the tool. And if we run this, we're going to get a preview of that data frame that's been transformed with PySpark code. And we have the PySpark code here to run, share with our colleagues, reproduce, edit however we like. Let's just take a look at it to sanity check that it's doing what we want. Give that a second to run. And here we go. There's that rich data frame display that shows some of that one-hot encoding, the scaling of the numeric values between 0 and 1, and the absence of those columns we dropped. So, ta-da, to conclude, what we've done is some simple transformations on a Spark data frame using Data Wrangler without any need to manually write Spark code or pandas code. I shouldn't miss the opportunity to highlight that even in the notebook, we have this relatively interactive display of a data frame. So the idea with Fabric is that using this display keyword instead of a standard dataframe.show or dataframe.head, you can get a more pleasing, more informative visual view of the data frame in line. And in the future, we're actually going to have a Data Wrangler entry point right from here so that after displaying a data frame in this way, if you want to go directly from this view into Data Wrangler, you can. The idea is that we're giving you different ways to look at data, examine it in more interactive and dynamic environments. So in Data Wrangler, in addition to transforming that data frame and applying operations, you have the ability to really dig into things like visualizations for each column, summary statistics. That's a really good place to do it, but you also have a set of those operations here available right from the notebook. So once we've used display to show a data frame, we can click on this inspect button and it's going to load up some of the same kinds of visuals and analytics that we would see in Data Wrangler, just in a different place. So once we click on inspect, we see that we can dig deeper into the distribution of individual columns, missing values, unique values, invalid values, and kind of as we would in Data Wrangler, start to get a better sense of what our data looks like and how we might need to transform it in order to model the data. The idea here is that Fabric notebooks support all of the standard functionality you get from other cloud-based notebooks, but we have special features like this built in to accelerate workflows, to guide lower code users, and to make the notebook a really democratized, accessible space for a range of personas. In a matter of clicks, you can get high-level visibility into your data, you can transform your data, and if you want to, using Data Wrangler, you can generate all that code in real time, unlocking more capabilities.
So just to summarize, Data Wrangler as of now supports Spark in addition to pandas. So it will generate the code I can run on my Spark cluster, and I can get the in parallel computation for like processing the delta, Spark at whatever the data format it is. What's the current stage for the Data Wrangler? Is it in a GA stage?
Data Wrangler All Up is generally available. The Spark support has been in public preview and will soon be in general availability too, but you can try it out today.
Awesome. Public preview. So what's the timeline that you are looking to make it GA? Like we are encouraging our customers to try it, use it.
Absolutely. We want to hear your feedback, but we're moving into GA very soon in a matter of probably a few weeks or a month or two.
And what are the next features that you are planning to extend to Data Wrangler? You mentioned that there is a specific list of operations that Data Wrangler is covering. Can you list a few and tell us more? What do you plan for that feature?
Absolutely. So the Data Wrangler operations right now span everything from really simple transformations like dropping columns, renaming columns, to more complex transformations like one-hot encodings, scaling values, flash fill values, where you can kind of, type in, for example, as you would in Excel, instances row by row of how you want to transform a given value, and then we generalize a formula for that. In the future, though, we want to keep expanding this list. The idea is that anything you would want to do with your data, any way you'd want to transform your data in a Fabric notebook, we'd want to support and make easier. So, two of our features that are coming up are designed to help fill in some of those gaps. One is a natural language to code transformation. So, if the operation you want to do is not in that list of Data Wrangler steps that we have, that operation library that's predefined, will give you the ability to just describe an operation as you would in a notebook with Copilot, and Data Wrangler will generate the code for you so you can preview it. So that helps close the gap between the list of operations that Data Wrangler natively supports and anything else you might want to do that's a little bit more complex. We also want to add capabilities that bring in Synapse ML operations for our open source machine learning library for distributed machine learning, so that AI involved operations like sentiment analysis, language translation, named entity recognition can be applied from Data Wrangler. So without having to go and format, code templates yourself, you can click on them, select parameters, and apply them to target columns and generate the code for you. So the future of Data Wrangler looks like listening to our customer feedback, adding operations that you want. So please tell me, tell Estera, get in touch with the team, and then bringing in AI so that operations we don't provide out of the box, we can start to provide to you, using translation from what you described to code. And of course, performance and reliability are always key to us. So we really want to hear from you about how it's working, what we're doing right, what we could still improve.
So for those who are watching us, please remember to leave the comment, give us a suggestion. You can also go to the ideas.fabric.microsoft.com and leave the suggestion, the idea that we should take and build the feature based on. We are reviewing and taking those ideas, including in our backlog. There's one more point I found about Data Wrangler. There is a demo, Accelerate Data Prep with Data Wrangler. Want to comment something about this demo?
Sure. So we have an article in our documentation for data science that walks through some of these capabilities I've demoed. You can check out the standard pandas workflow. You can look at the Spark workflow. Shows you both. And you can check in going forward as we add operations here and as we add in some of those AI capabilities. But the bottom line is we want you to try out the feature and get in touch about what it's missing. If there are operations you expect to see for transforming data that aren't there, tell us and we can add them in. And hopefully in the future, when we have that natural language to code describe your operation capabilities, we will be able to close that gap for you, even if we don't know in advance what the operation you want to apply is. You'll be able to describe it and we can generate that code at the same time.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining today. And for those who are watching us, remember to hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe the channel, share the video with your colleagues who may benefit from using Data Wrangler and watching the videos. We are trying to share the latest features, the latest changes, and also the demos, how you can take it, use it. We hope that you find the value. And until the next time, happy exploring Data Wrangler for Spark and Pandas as well. Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Thanks so much.